Well, good morning, all. It's nice to talk to you, even if it is virtually. I would have loved to be there. It is all of 16 degrees here in Toronto, so I would much prefer being down there to being here. But good. I will now carry on. Thank you, Steve, so much for the introduction. I deeply appreciate it. As you can see, there's me and my smiling face, beard and all. I don't have a jacket on today, I'll let you know. Debbie Reddish was going to be with us. She's my partner. She's based in New Hampshire, and we've been doing this kind of work for many, many years now. Readysmith has been in existence for 8.5 years now, and things are good. So I'm going to carry on here. I'm going to move into our presentation. We'll carry on. If you want to ask a question, please key it into the chat window, which is available in your control screen. Depending on your browser, you may have to move your cursor near the top of the screen that you're seeing to open up the control screen. Okay, but we're happy to collect your questions. If I can't get all your questions answered, we'll make sure we answer them by email to all of you. Okay, so moving along. Here's a collection of really, really bad things that can happen to you in your business. Not just in your IT operation, but in your business. And this is a whole range of things that you probably have not built into your business plan. You might have built some of them into your business continuity plan, but not into your strategic plan for your business to move forward. These are all things that can interrupt your business. And this is the purview of business continuity and disaster recovery planning. All of these bad things that can happen. Now, I'm not going to talk about all of these bad things today. In particular, I'm talking about cybercrime, which is one of the newer threats that I've had to build into our business continuity and disaster recovery service so that our customers can anticipate and learn how to deal with the impact, the results of having a cyber attack that actually works. You know, if you have a cybercrime dumped on top of you and your normal protective measures don't work, you're going to have to deal with it. And that's really what I'm talking about today. Now let's delve just a tad deeper. Types of cybercrime. I'll be talking a little bit more about various types later on, mostly from an impact perspective. But it can be a distributed denial of service attacks or just denial of service attacks. It can be identity theft, it can be ransomware. And really your impacts end up being several in nature. It can be a financial impact. If it's ransomware and they want money from you to give you your systems back, that costs you money. If it's identity theft or almost anything else, that's an potential exposure of confidential data, which I'm sure you're all concerned about. And there can also be the damage to your organization's reputation out there. So I'll be talking a little bit about those as we move along, but these are the kinds of things that I'm sure you're worried about, and I'm sure you're doing something about in terms of identifying them and protecting against them. What I don't know is how much you're doing in terms of planning to respond when they actually happen. So that's the issue. What happens when they happen? Okay, so we talk about being ready. Our name is Readysmith, and our catchword is, are you ready? And I've qualified that a little bit by saying ready for anything. You remember that great big conglomeration of potential threats that I showed you a couple of slides ago? That's anything. You need to prepare for and be ready to respond to anything bad that can happen to you. That a quick and effective response to any significant disruption to your ability to do business. Quick and effective. Now, you're not going to plan a lot for a small disruption. If an application goes down and comes back in 5 minutes, you're not going to plan much for that. If it's a critical application and it goes down and it stays down for 6 weeks, you're going to plan for that, or you should be planning for that. If you can't use your email server because somebody's holding it up to ransom, somebody out there, one of the guys with the dark hoodies on, the black hats as they call them, you're going to plan for that. You need to plan for that. Now, the other very key thing about being ready, and I can't emphasize this enough, it's a steady state. You always need to be ready. We run into so many companies, so many organizations that have developed what were probably good business continuity procedures and crisis management procedures and IT recovery procedures, but they developed them 3 years ago, and they haven't touched them since. These folks aren't ready because in 3 years, a lot changes in the way you do business, the applications that you run. So it's a steady state. You always must be ready. Okay, so we're going to move along from that now. Now we're going to talk about how you deal with cybersecurity. The NIST Cybersecurity Framework, that's the National Institute of Standards for Technology, is an American organization with a worldwide reputation, and they publish standards. They've published the Cybersecurity Framework, and the Cybersecurity Framework talks about dealing with potential cyber attacks and realized cyber attacks. First of all, you need to identify what's likely to happen and do something about it. You need to protect your environment. That's with various pieces of software and best practice, good practice. You need to then be able to detect that a cyber attack has happened and has done something or not done something, as the case may be. You need to respond to the event, that cyber attack, either improving your detection or dealing with the impact of the cyber attack. And you need to recover from the cyber attack. And these are continuous things. You're continuously identifying, protecting, detecting, responding, and recovering. Well, you're not continuously responding and recovering. It depends on what happens to you. Now, in my piece that I'm talking about today, I am very specifically going to be talking about how you respond and how you recover. I'm not going to talk at all, or very much, about identifying, protecting, and detecting, because that's really technical, and I'm not super technical. I've been in IT a lot in my career. I ran IT for a large insurance company here in Canada for a number of years, but I've been consulting in business continuity and disaster recovery for over 30 years now, so I don't have the technical smarts, the very, very deep technical smarts to do that identify, protect, and detect piece. Your people can do this. They need to step up a little bit, I suspect, in terms of knowledge and understanding and technical capabilities. But again, I'm focusing on the respond and recover piece. Now, responding and recovering. As with any business continuity planning project, you need to assess what's likely to happen to you in terms of probability of that event and impact of that event. So high probability and high impact means you're going to spend time and money worrying about those high probability, high impact events, and less money worrying about low probability, low impact events. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the probability, not so much specifically in the context of your own specific business and what you do in your business, but in the context of statistics and published information and research that's been done. So you get a sense of How likely is it that you're going to have a problem? So let's dig into that. CyberEdge Group does a cyber threat defense report. This is kind of a busy slide. But the question, the key question that they had 943 answers to, how many times do you estimate? How many times do you estimate? How many times do you estimate that your organization's global network has been compromised in a successful cyber attack in the past 12 months? Now, most current statistics are for 2016 on the left side, and they're red. Funny, Readysmith, whoever Readysmith is telling me that they can't hear me, but the rest of the world can. Okay. So the increase, cyber attacks, successful cyber attacks are increasing between 2014, 2015, 2016. Between 1 and 5 times in the past 12 months, a successful cyber attack. 51.9% of the 943 respondents said that they were having cyber attacks. I've got Barbados not working for sound. This is crazy that sound keeps dropping.
Well, carry on, Michael, because you're recorded, so if you have to, we'll send the recording.
Okay. Oh, that's right. I am recording. Well, it's funny. My sound seems to be jumping in and out across the internet for those that are online. Okay, I'm going to carry on. Now, there's a cost of data breach study done in conjunction with IBM and Disaster Recovery Journal. And the cost of a data breach study, there's a 26% probability that your company will have a data breach in the next 24 months. That's awful high. And the average cost is $4 million US. So again, I'm trying to give you a sense of the probability here of what might happen to you, or what might already have happened to you if you're not good at detecting it. Okay, the probability of cybercrime. Again, this is from Symantec's latest Internet Security Threat Report. And I got a lot of information here, and I'm not going to spend a whole whack of time plowing through this. But you can kind of peruse this. Second last bullet, ransomware attacks increased 35% in 2015, and they continue to increase. Over 500 million personal records were stolen or lost in 2015. Spear phishing campaigns targeting employees increased 55% in 2015. These are all terribly scary numbers to me. And as I did this research for this presentation, it was intriguing to me as these numbers started to pop up. From their 2015 report, Symantec said, cyber attackers are leapfrogging defenses in many ways that companies lack the insight to anticipate. They're moving faster, and we're not. Malware is increasing, as the 2016 report indicates. And they're streamlining and upgrading what they do while we're still fighting the old tactics that they used. So I think this tells us that this is a high probability event. And we'll shortly move to impact. This is particularly interesting to me. This is from Verizon in 2013, and I don't have much reason to believe that it's decreased. 95% of the breaches started with a phish. 23% of people that received these phishing emails opened the phish and clicked on the link. And 11% opened the phishing email and ran the attachment. I'm glad to see fewer people are running the attachment. So that's 11%, that's too much. Let's think about that. If you have 100 people, email users in your organization, about 10 of them will click on the attachment of a phished email. 10 of them, of your people. That's kind of scary. And that attachment can do all sorts of things to that particular device that they're using and can reach further into your network because they're in that attachment is inside your firewall. It's inside your safe zone. Okay. Now let's move to the impact side. This is going to be a busy slide for you. So, very busy slide. Let's just talk for a minute. Identity theft. You know what identity theft is. But the thing is if one individual's personally identifying data is stolen, that's one person that's exposed. That if the identity theft is based on the theft of 10,000 customer records that contain 10,000 sets of personally identifying data, that becomes a significant impact to you, your organization, and can well be a significant impact to your reputation when the word gets out, because the word will get out. Many companies try and hide this. I don't recommend you hide it. You need to have a strategy in place as to how you deal with this, and we'll be talking about that in a minute. So that if you look at a ransomware, you pay dollars in the ransom, but it also denies you service until you pay the dollars or until you get out of the denial of service that they're holding you to ransom for. Distributed denial of service or denial of service attacks. Somebody can't use you can't use your own server. It might be your email server and you can't use it. And it might come in and out. It may be bursting in and out because they're using a botnet, which is the next one on the list, to a series of compromised computers. They're using them to attack your email server or your website where you sell your service or your product. So there are multiple types of attack, very brief definition of those types of attack, but you have to understand the impact that these attacks are going to have on you. I can't tell you the impact. I can describe the kinds of things that are going to happen to you, but you're going to have to figure this out for yourself. You're definitely going to have to figure that. And one of your first stops might be to revisit your business impact analysis, assuming you have done one fairly recently. Because if, for example, it's ransomware and they've gotten inside your Exchange server, Microsoft Exchange server, so you can't do email until you pay the money or until you fix the problem. Your business impact analysis should tell you how critical your mail exchange server is and how fast it needs to be back in operation. That will therefore help you judge the impact. If you don't have a recent BI, business impact analysis, or you've never done one, then you should redo it or just go ahead and do the business impact analysis and make sure that you're covering off each individual application and the impact of not being able to use it and what it means to your organization in terms of impact on critical business processes and in terms of dollar loss. That'll help you judge how tough this is. And then the next thing you do is make sure that your crisis management team understands the impacts and the probability of these events. You can use my presentation as a basis for talking to them. Now, you may not have a formally defined crisis management team in your organization. And if you don't, just whenever I say crisis management team, think executive team, okay? Because they need to understand all about this, enough about this, so that they're worried and concerned and they start committing time to planning for and responding to, planning to respond and planning to recover. They also need to spend time and money on identifying, and protecting. Okay? Now, you see my little diagram in the upper right-hand corner there. The crisis management team, if you don't have a formal organization for responding to any of these disasters or emergencies or crises of any sort, hurricanes or whatever, then you can translate crisis management to an executive team and IT recovery team to your own IT staff. Emergency team is not particularly connected to dealing with cybercrime. They certainly deal with fires and floods and hurricanes and so on. Okay, so your crisis management team or executive team really needs to understand this. One of the things they must do is dig into whatever legislation, guidance, or best practices are published by authorities in your own jurisdiction. Now, if you're in Cayman, that's the Monetary Authority that has just published some new guidance. And they've also published that they want everybody to follow the NIST Cybersecurity framework, amongst other things. Chances are that the Cayman Monetary Authority and government is going to be adopting the guidance that's been issued in Guernsey and Jersey. So we'll see how that unfolds. Wherever your jurisdiction is, you need to understand what your government and or regulatory authorities require of you if you have data breached or you have any of these impacts that I've been talking about that affect your customers and or the rest of the public. But it's not good enough to just look at your own jurisdiction. You have to look at the jurisdictions that you serve. So if you have 10,000 customers and 8,000 of them are in the United States, you need to understand the laws in the United States that are required of entities operating in the United States, even though you're not based in the United States. You have to understand what's expected of you and how you must respond. If you're a financial institution, you have some pretty good ideas of what the Americans require of you when one of their institutions or some of their residents are affected by events that have a financial basis. So you understand that the American might and strength is being flexed outside of its own jurisdiction. And this is just another example of how you must be careful. Okay, so your crisis management team or executive team must understand that. They need to understand the types of cybercrime and its potential impacts, specifically in the context of the business that you do. Very important. If they really dig down and you really help them understand it, then they will spend time and money to help you deal with it and prepare for the event. Obviously, they're going to build response procedures for event-based investigation and decision-making, and the notifications that they, as an executive team or a crisis management team, must do in continuing to monitor the event once it has happened. Okay. And the notification piece is incredibly important. And I've capitalized all stakeholders. Let's think about the potential stakeholders that need to understand this. Staff. If you have a data breach, it may be staff information that is exposed. It may be customers' information that's exposed. It may be suppliers. It may be board of directors information, possibly shareholders. And who else needs to know? Shareholders certainly need to know. Board of directors need to know that a serious event has happened, a cybercrime, which may have reputation impact. Hence, the board of directors, shareholders, investment analysts who are analyzing the value of your stock and the future of your stock, assuming you're publicly traded, and drawing conclusions about it. If you have a major data breach, you should tell them, but you should be able to tell them, and this is what we're doing about it, and this is the total impact, and this is how we've dealt with the issue. so that they can be more comfortable rather than having mounting unsubstantiated fears and rumors circulating amongst the investment analysts. And certainly your regulators need to know. Okay, so notification is a key part of dealing with the impact of a cybercrime out there. And the better you deal with it out there with stakeholders, the more you're able to manage any damage to your reputation. Okay. Now, the other thing you must ensure is communication with IT staff or the IT recovery team. And I will talk about that in a little bit when I talk about what the IT recovery team or IT staff must do in preparation. Okay, planning to respond for the IT recovery team. If there's one thing that's really important here for an IT recovery team or IT staff to understand, this is not just an IT problem. This is a business problem. And you've probably understood that and picked them up from the last slide when I was talking about the responsibilities of the crisis management team. So IT staff must be ready to communicate clearly, completely, thoroughly with the crisis management team or the management team. I ran IT for a number of years in insurance companies before I got into this kind of work. And there's a very strong tendency when you're in IT, if you have a problem, you put your head down and you try and fix it. And you'll work through the night trying to fix it. And your first thought is not to tell somebody else that there's a problem. Your first thought is to fix it. And it's a very common IT habit. Not running us down, but it's just very natural to zero in on the problem, dive down, just get buried in that problem and try and fix it. That's okay, but you need to make sure that your crisis management team is on side, knows what's going on, while you're managing the technical analysis and recovery, so that they can manage everything else. Very critical. So this communication between the two functions is just vitally important. Can't emphasize that enough. And again, as an IT recovery team or IT staff, you review the types of cybercrime impacts, make sure you understand them, flesh them out, ensure that your recovery procedures that you've built as part of your IT recovery plan, disaster recovery plan, include tasks responding to each impact. That'll tend to be on a server basis. You need to compare your potential impact to your latest BIA results. You know, we talk about recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives, RTOs and RPOs. And anybody who's deeply involved in disaster recovery and business continuity planning will understand those phrases. Recovery time objective is how fast does that business process or that application have to be back in operation. A recovery point objective is how old can the data be when I restore the application back to service? Can it be a week old? Can it be a month old? Or does it need to be only 10 seconds old? These two things kind of drive your design as to how you intend to recover servers. Okay. Now, in terms of your backup program, how many versions do you retain of your backups off-site? This is for the IT team. You know, if you're only keeping 3 versions, that's probably enough. You might need to keep 30 versions, 30 days worth or more, because you need to have sufficient to handle the impacts of ransomware attacks and malicious damage. When Sony got hit and lost the ability to use many of their servers, many of their critical servers were out of service for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. And that's the kind of impact you need to think about. 6 weeks, you can't use a critical application. That gets a little scary. And are my backups capable of restoring back to 6 weeks plus a day so that I can avoid whatever the malicious piece of code was that was placed there by some hacker? Clearly develop and test formally documented restore procedures for each type of server you run, and you need to test it regularly to make sure that you know how to get your Microsoft Exchange server up and running with either the latest backup or a 30-day-old backup. And that's going to include every type of server, including non-production servers. You think about non-production. Suppose I'm using a development server and I'm developing this brand new application that's going to revolutionize how my company works. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to be out of service for 6 weeks because I might miss that January 1st implementation date. And that's just as critical to the business as keeping a full production server in operation. Okay. And you may wish to consider alternate recovery operations for your critical applications. Different ways of doing it other than with your own server that's in trouble right now. The prime example is going to be email. Pardon me. If you lose your main Microsoft Exchange server for whatever reason, if you can flip over to an alternate approach such as Mimecast offers you, you can carry on doing email while you figure out what the heck is wrong with your Microsoft Exchange server, and you can carry on. Let's face it, email is probably the most critical application any organization runs these days. So, that's the kind of alternative that you consider. So there's a different way I can do this. And the same goes for if I can't use my order entry application. Is there a manual way for me to work? Well, maybe I can use those old order entry forms, paper forms, record what the customer wants, take the form down to the warehouse and give it to the warehouse man and say, we have an order for 23 widgets. Please ship them out to that guy over there. That kind of thing. Maybe you can work manually for a short period of time while the IT staff sorts things out. I was in a presentation yesterday about a major exercise that was done for the Bank of Canada, and it was a cyber attack exercise. They lost all of their servers. They were out of service for an indeterminate period of time. And one of the major results of the exercise was that the Bank of Canada decided to go back and look at manual procedures for very, very critical business functions. And this is revolutionary as well as scary because we've bailed on manual procedures for many years now. But they've decided that for certain very critical things, they're going to have to go back and rework and rebuild manual procedures, documented procedures, so that if they do have a ransomware attack again, or a real ransomware attack instead of a scenario-based ransomware attack, that they can decide to continue. Okay. So, with that, we will be publishing a recording. I'm hoping the recording sounds great. So I'm happy to accept any questions either over the chat facility here or directly from those sitting in the office in Cayman, munching on their goodies and drinking their coffee that I didn't get to have.
Any questions, Jay? Well, Mike, I want to say thanks. I think one of the things that does stick out is the PIA, people doing a business impact analysis, and really looking at what do we do, what do we need every day, even if we thought maybe some of our backups in place with eShore or the Shure International Data Centers, or we've got Mimecast for email. What are the things are we looking at that could be vulnerable? So yeah. I do highly recommend folks. We don't do the first couple arrows on Michael's slide where we talk about identifying and doing some of the business impact analysis. We work with great consultants to do that. does what when you have to break glass and get to the emergency procedure. That's where obviously the experts like Michael and his team come in. So I guess my only takeaway is, if you haven't done an impact analysis recently, or like Michael, that if it's sitting around in a 3-ring binder and it's static and hasn't actually become a living and breathing process in your business, then, please reach out to us so we can at least give you some free advice. Software's not free, but the advice is. So thank you, Michael.
Good.
If you don't have else, I think we'll just go back to doing a little networking and chatting amongst ourselves, and we do these things on a Friday. I'm too scared to think about all the bad things that happen on a Friday.
Okay. I have one final picture for you that I found the other day that I thought you might enjoy. Doesn't have much to do with cybercrime, but I like collecting good pictures that make people think about stuff.
Yeah, but we're in the house, so that doesn't bother us.
All right. Well, there are still servers somewhere in the cloud.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks very much, folks.
All right.